Hello, and welcome to the list of my personal favourite hit songs of 1995. In this year, the highest grossing film was Batman Forever, the highest rated TV show was ER for the second consecutive year, and the biggest selling album was Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. Now, I've already said numerous times in the past in my videos that making a short list for my best lists is really hard for me, and especially as I've gotten comments on how people wish I could have talked about X iconic song that only made the honourable mentions. And yes, I do feel really bad about that, I have to admit. And especially with a decade as iconic and diverse as the 90s, you're sadly just not gonna please everyone. With lists like these, I find it's a struggle to balance between my honest opinion and trying to be as representative as possible in terms of genre diversity, if that makes sense. Maybe one day I could do a mini grab bag review video one day if I get enough regular viewers. We'll just have to see what happens. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Criteria, as always, is anything that debuted in Billboard's year-end list for 1995, the European Hot 100 year-end list for 1995, or anything that cracked the top 10 anywhere in the world that didn't make either list. Now let's get on with the show. So, I've already talked about in the previous video how big of a deal that Mylène Farmer is in France, and in 1995 this song was her big comeback single after a short hiatus, and at the time this song actually threw people for a loop as this was a pretty radical reinvention at the time, as she was hanging around Los Angeles for a while between projects, so naturally this and the parent album it came from were very heavily influenced by American trends of the time. Eventually people warmed up to the change, and I personally enjoy this era of hers, mostly because it has a lot of my favourite 90s sounds smashed together. For those of you pop heads who are chomping at the bit to hear that supposed Mariah Carey grunge album that never came to light, maybe this album will help scratch that itch for you. I mean, it is a pop diva incorporating elements of grunge after all, and she does it surprisingly well in my opinion. Now this song specifically is a big old feminist anthem and is actually arguably ahead of its time as well, as it acknowledges trans women as well. I know that the trans community are having a really rough time of it at the moment, but back in 1995 in terms of trans acceptance, it may as well have been the Stone Age, so we stand a forward-thinking queen in this house. Also, I just want to make a comment about how the visuals of her in the massive dress in front of the train is just absolutely stunning. It's like the ultimate wind machine. Slay! Now, there's something very nostalgic about this song for me that gives it a real soft spot. Obviously, a big part of that is that because the song itself is about nostalgia for the past, and specifically the people you used to know in high school. The title itself, 74-75, is actually a reference to their senior year of high school. But there is also something in the melody of the song that is also nostalgic in a kind of somber way. I struggle to pinpoint an exact influence, but there's something kind of 70s roots rock about the whole song, which, given its theme, would make a whole lot of sense, of course. Now, I said in the past that I'm trying not to dwell so much on the past these days, but in a weird way, I kind of find this song somewhat comforting, even though I mentioned before that it's pretty melancholy in its nostalgia. Maybe it's just me and my penchant for melancholic songs in general. Now, I'd imagine a fair review watching this video would find this pick quite a weird one, as admittedly it has a very easy listening dad rock vibe to it. But hey, I never said that I was too cool for this kind of stuff, and in my opinion, it's very well made easy listening dad rock. Now, one of the funny things about this music review YouTube community that I have observed over the years is that most of you guys will jump over hoops gushing over how amazing Mariah Carey is. Okay, maybe it's just me growing up in a country that made fun of her overuse of melismatic vocal gymnastics. But I'm actually not that big a fan of a lot of her songs. Now, don't get me wrong, I do agree that she's one of the best technical singers ever, but most of her songs are just really not my thing. But anyway, I have mentioned before on this channel that not only am I a fan of this song, but I also said that I think this is her best song ever, so yeah, its inclusion on this list shouldn't have come as a surprise to any of you who are regular viewers of my channel. Now, you'd think that a pop star taking the beat from Genius of Love by Tom Tom Club would make me upset like some sort of backpacking hipster, but I actually think this song truly does the sample justice by tacking it onto one of the catchiest and most joyful tunes of the entire 90s. And adding some of that G-funk screechy synth over it for good measure. And my overriding memory of this song, and this is going to be a bit of a weird reference, but it's that scene in Rush Hour when the little girl is singing it in the car, much to the annoyance of her handlers.
I'm so into you, darling, if you only knew.
Yeah, I think we've all done that as kids at some point. And by the way, Rush Hour is a really fun, dumb movie. I can still quote it after all these years. You should give it a watch if you haven't already.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
You don't know how it feels. You don't know how it...
So, Kumarai, I have a bit of a bone to pick with you. But in all seriousness, this is a bit of a sad entry on this list, as this song was Tom Petty's last big hit. So, unfortunately, this is going to mark the last time I'll get to talk about one of his songs. Or at least until I eventually cover the 80s in like 20 years, given how erratic my schedule is. Now, it is worth pointing out, in fairness, that this song does make more sense in context with its parent album, Wildflowers, which is a pretty good breakup album in my opinion, and one of the best albums in the entire decade. And I really do get the sense of feeling emotionally beaten down by a deteriorating relationship from this song and just wanting to let off some steam and vent to your friends. And I do understand why some people would be off-put by this whole sentiment of, oh, you don't know how it feels to be me, but speaking from a personal standpoint, I'm someone who feels like I have been judged and othered my entire life, so I have this constant need to feel that I'm being understood and validated, and that I'm not being judged for being quote-unquote different. So yeah, personally, I can totally relate to the sentiment of wanting to tell the world, you don't know what it's like to be me, because truth is, it really fucking sucks being me. So, even if you guys don't agree with me in regards to this song, I hope you can at least get where I'm coming from here. Oh boy, this song feels a little bit more sad nowadays, doesn't it? Rest in peace, by the way. Now, for those of you youngins watching this video who weren't even born at this point, I cannot understate just how absolutely everywhere this song was at the time. Like, this was so massive, it was truly omnipresent. But anyway, for those of you who are not familiar with the subject matter of this song, it's basically a cautionary tale of that whole gangster lifestyle. Like, it's not something to glorify, especially when you live with the constant fear of getting needlessly killed at any moment. And it also famously sampled a Stevie Wonder song, and this might sound like blasphemy, but this song honestly made it sound even bigger and more sinister than the original. Please don't kill me for that. And of course, it's also worth pointing out that this was attached to the movie Dangerous Minds, which, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, it was about a teacher trying to make a positive impact on a troubled inner city school. So this song obviously makes it a very good fit with those themes. Even if you never actually saw the movie at the time, you at least heard of it because of this song. You could even argue that the mid to late 90s was a peak time for movie soundtrack hits, and of course, this was one of the biggest examples of that. Now, I've talked before about how gangster rap was thriving around this time, and going back to my intro for this video, I have to admit that I feel a bit bad for not putting many gangster rap songs in the actual lists, and a lot of them have been relegated to the honorable mentions, so hopefully this will make up for it a tiny bit. Can I just say banger? Yeah, this is gonna be another one of those cop-out entries where I don't really have much else to say about this song, and I kind of feel bad because this is a bona fide 90s hip-hop classic, and I wouldn't really be doing it justice. It's just not exactly the kind of song that requires much deep analysis. You put this song at any party and the place will go off. I mean, everybody knows this song and everybody will instantly be bopping to it. And surprisingly enough, even though Eurodance was still very much king of the hill in 1995, I actually don't have any Eurodance entries on the list proper for this year, so I guess you could consider this as some sort of replacement, as a kind of banger of any genre that I really liked as a kid kind of entry. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, and I'm just gonna keep it short and move on to the next entry. So this is another song that felt like it was absolutely everywhere when I was a kid. I was only 7 years old in 1995, and even then I was fascinated by the lyrics of this song. So you probably could say that even back then I had a tendency to lean towards songs that had a bit more to say than your average pop banger. There are just so many good little lines throughout the song that do a great job of painting a picture of desperately missing someone. And honestly, I'd be here all day listening to them all. The version of the song that became a hit was actually a dance remix by legendary dance producer Todd Terry. The original was a simple acoustic song that kind of had this laid-back, coffee table-ish vibe. It's nice in its own right, but personally I think that the dance remix gives it more drama and gravitas in a way. Coupled with the haunting and yearning vocal performance, it just overall creates a song that I've always found very compelling. Unfortunately, this is another case where I kind of have to cop out because I can't really expand my thoughts on why I like the song so much. It really is one of those cases where it really does speak for itself, and if you want to learn more, you can just watch the One Hit Wonderland episode, which, by the way, is a really good episode. I highly recommend it. So, yeah, apologies there. I hope you guys guys will excuse me for getting a little bit sentimental in this segment, but this song in particular just brings back a lot of fond memories for me. This song just perfectly encapsulates the optimism and joy of being young at that period of time without having a care in the world. And the band were in their late teens when this song came out, which makes total sense because this is the kind of song that only someone in their teens or very early 20s can make and have it be authentic and charming and not grating in the slightest. Yeah, looking at you, One Republic. Actually, come to think about it, back in the day, teen musicians used to make happy music about having fun, and nowadays all the kids are droning on about how many benzodiazepines they took that day. If that doesn't tell you about how badly us millennials and Gen Z have been traumatized over the last 20 years, I don't know what else does. But anyway, I digress. To me, this is a perfect summer song. I can just imagine running around on the beach or having a ride in the car with this as the soundtrack and having a big smile on my face. I know for some people this kind of sunny, overly happy song about being young and having fun can be very irritating and to some people even come across as forced, but I don't think it's forced at all in this song. It feels very natural and yeah, in my opinion, in terms of songs that talk about having young fun in the sunshine and all that, I don't think there are very many songs that do it better than this one, to be honest with you. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was actually very close to having Blur top my best list for 2 years in a row. But ultimately I decided against it as I felt that it'll be more fair to give another act a chance. But anyway, this was the year that they put out their anticipated follow-up to Parklife: The Great Escape. It's not a bad album per se, but yeah, to me I could tell that the band were definitely getting tired of the whole Britpop shtick by this point. But regardless, it did still produce some good singles, and of course, judging by this list, the Universal for me is the absolute best of the lot. In an album that was overall rather bitter and cynical, this was a rare bright spot of optimism that looked forward to what possibilities the future would bring, and the song slowly builds up to something grandiose. Like, yes, indeed, all the good things you hope for in life really could happen, and it's going to be the most triumphant feeling in the world. And what really elevates the song for me is the string section. At the start it has this kind of symphonic, almost Little Britain sound to it, and then it develops into this great big crescendo with horns that just sound like pure joy and triumph. Or at least that's what the song wants you to think it is, because the thing is, I've read that this song is actually about Prozac, which was pretty much the antidepressant du jour of the 90s, and how those kind of medications create a false sense of optimism, which, speaking as someone who's been on antidepressants for a decade now, is actually quite disturbing when you think about it. I mean, I've spent God knows how many years hoping that my mental health will improve, and it never has so far. Oh God. Now, I don't want to end this segment on a sad note, but goddamn, Damon Albarn really is an evil genius for making a song about fake optimism that invokes the feeling of optimism in the music. Holy shit, dude. And here's the cop-out part of the video where I just basically do a quick credit scroll of all the songs that I wanted to put on the list but had to settle for honourable mentions instead. I'm honestly running out of things to say in this filler bit. I basically do this completely improv, and like the rest of the video, that's all scripted pretty much, but yeah. And I think that's about it now, so all that's left for me to do is to do the recap of the top 10 before introducing my number one pick. From a British perspective, this is possibly the most obvious pick I can make to top a best of 1995 list. And I'm not one to bend to popular opinion, so I chose it as my number one pick because it just made the most sense to me. But yeah, this is one of the most iconic songs of the whole Britpop era. Arguably rivaling Wonderwall, depending on your point of view. But anyway, the song was inspired by Jarvis Cocker's experience at Central St. Martin's, where this rich heiress in his class wanted to be like the common people, and he quite rightly found that insulting. Now, speaking as someone who grew up in a poor working class area of the UK, working class life in this country fucking sucks. And Jarvis himself knows this very well because he grew up in bloody Sheffield, of all places, and he spent roughly a decade on the dole trying to get his band some degree of notoriety, and then in the mid-90s he finally achieved his dream. 1995 specifically was the absolute apex, being a legendary headlining set at Glastonbury where they had to replace the Stone Roses at the last minute. A prime gig that only the elite get the privilege of playing. It really is one of the most heartwarming underdog stories in music history, in my opinion. The final third of this song is him quite rightly calling out the girl for all this BS, because our struggles aren't some sort of cosplay you can put on for funsies and then call your rich dad to bail you out when it's too hard for you. If only we called out certain fat cat politicians who tried to put on this man of the people facade in recent years. Cough, cough. And of course, I can't finish this segment off without recommending its parent album, Different Class. If you want more working class stories set to ridiculously catchy pop tunes, go ahead and listen to it, and it is still regarded as one of the best albums of the entire 90s to this day. A big part of the ethos of the Britpop movement was to project your own version of the British way of life into song, whether it was Blur's sinister caricatures or Oasis's more direct call to arms, and to me this song did it the best out of anyone. And that is why it's an absolute no-brainer for the title of my best hit song of 1995. So that's it! That's the best of 1995 finally done. Yeah, I know that this video has been really overdue because just the past few weeks I've just had ailment after ailment and I don't deal well with illness, so obviously I was just in no state to make a video. But I think I'm finally on the mend, so I just managed to crack this one out, and hopefully I should be back on schedule. And if you can hear a little bit of reverb, it's also because my room got rearranged and I don't know where to put my soundproofing, so this is kind of bugging me because the reverb is just making this sound really amateurish. Oh well, what can you do? Anyway, next video we should be looking forward to is the worst of 1996, and this one, hopefully this time, should be out within the next couple of weeks. So until then, I'll see you around.